Hello, innovators. I am Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator. Today I'm talking with Alex Dunsdon, a venture capitalist at SAATCHINVEST, a modern day philosopher, and a polymathic Linkybrain. Thank you for joining me on the Polymath Podcast.
No problem.
So, when it comes to the show, it's about the journey of becoming like a poly-innovator, which is my personal brand. So, please say hello to the innovators in the audience.
Hello, innovators in the audience. Hope you're all well. Hope that we can all learn something today through conversation, which is the only way that anyone in society learns and how we build things.
I love that. It's a perfect way to start off this video too. So I figured that today we're here to talk about polymathic Linkybrains, serendipity, and overall a discussion about your very interesting life. Hello and welcome to the Polymath Podcast interviews and discussions. Sure. Share something about yourself that no one knows about you.
Something that no one knows about me. Well, I'll tell you one thing that no one knows about me that's quite interesting. Life is, I think one of the greatest eternal truths about life is that life is struggle. Okay. And I don't think I think most people have personas and most people go around having masks, and for very real reasons, right? They help us survive in the world. But, you get to a certain age, like I'm now 40, and you get to a certain age where the mask stops serving you. And one thing that people won't know about me is that, one of the things that really freed me to be much more aligned in what I do and what my purpose is when my dad died 2 years ago. And it's quite a weird thing to talk about your dad dying being a freeing moment, because most people go, well, of course, it's very grief-ridden and it's very hard, and all of that is true, of course. But equally, everyone takes on their life, taking on expectations of others, whether it be school teachers, whether it be people in jobs, whether it be parents. Like, you spend your life trying to survive because your brains aren't formed. You've got no idea how to make it in this world. And so you adapt. It's what we're really good at. And what I worked out was, my dad was great, gave me unconditional love, but a feeling that, was I quite good enough? Because, he was the guy who stomped on the touchline if I didn't score a goal, or who gave me love when I achieved things by working. And even though I hadn't lived with them for, 20 years, there was something weirdly freeing about my dad dying that took off that expectation, the other.
The weight, almost.
The weight, although I didn't know it was a weight, I didn't feel it was a weight. I'd not lived there for 20 years and I had a good childhood, so I had no reason to think there was a weight. But it was fascinating to me that then, I did that, and it was around the same time I did this Linky Brain thing as well. I suddenly lifted the mask. And the mask that had helped me survive was me being liked by everyone, me fitting into lots and lots of different scenarios, me working really hard, and frankly just not valuing myself and not valuing my time. And for me, there's some people very good, but I never worked out exactly what I want. I'd always find a way to do the fun thing at the time. But I used to get exhausted. And so anyway, I can go into any of those little threads, but there's a thing people don't know, and maybe a surprising thing that other people may come to experience and find that might be odd, and they might feel guilt or they might feel shame about that. Good.
Well, and I think it's a perfect lesson for someone to start out with us on this episode as well. Just learning to experience life for the sake of you experiencing life, not doing the expectations of others. I've definitely felt that as well. I understand. And maybe not to the degree of you, though. This leads actually to one of my first questions anyways, is why is time freedom at the top of your priorities list?
Yeah, it's a great question. It happened over a number of years. I'd never even, here's another thing, most people don't question what they want in the world. And I remember being asked two questions: how much money is enough? I had no answer. I had no idea. I hadn't thought about how much money is enough. And what will you do when you've got all the money? Because what that's really saying is, what do you do with your time?
Yeah, what do you want to do?
And what I worked out was that, well, first I had to work out how much money was enough, because I know how it's a really great exercise. Is it $1 million? Loads of entrepreneurs who say they're building $1 billion companies, you find out how much money they actually want, they might want $1 million. It's like, well, you don't need to build a venture capital company to do that. You can just do that by this or that, the other. But most people don't stop and think, and most people massively underestimate the benefit of time. Like, and again, things like that, you realize you're going to die and time is short. Another thing most people don't question and realize, because why would they? It's fucking scary.
Yeah.
I found myself like rushing through life a lot more. So a long way around to saying, how did I get to time freedom? There's a bunch of those factors, but really it's having some grief in life. I talked about one thing, there's some other things as well, like everyone has in their life, which makes you start to question, what am I doing? It's having various mentors who ask those questions of me. So, you know, there's 2 ways to succeed in the world: better questions, better answers. If you don't have loads of people who ask you the right questions around you, get them, even if you disagree with a lot of them. I mean, I just remember one day they asked me that question in a park, and it just suddenly became clear to me. I just pictured a triangle in my head. I put time freedom at the top, and I started, what if I started doing that more now? And the answer to that was I had to work out much more about who I was, what I wanted, and therefore how I wanted to spend every minute of every day. And I came to the conclusion that life is about meaningful work with people you love.
Right.
And I'd spent my 30s like building amazing networking, socially, networking externally, just building up great groups of people. Subconsciously, I didn't know why I was doing it. But now I know that they're the group of people that I want to spend all of my time with. I don't want to have to spend time with dicks. I only want to go into business with people I can envision myself spending the rest of my life with. And for me, if there's a definition of achievement in work life, it's that. Am I spending every minute doing meaningful work with people I love?
They say that you're the culmination of the 5 closest people in your life, friends and or family. And do you want those people to be dicks, or do you want them to be people who are going to put you out of your comfort zone and push you forward? Or is that not the right question to ask?
It's probably not the right question, because they can be all sorts. They can be dicks around you. Like, what have they got to be? They've got to be people who, that are nourishing, fulfilling. They might fill out gaps in you. They might be different types of people, but they absolutely can't eat at your energy. Like, if they're around you and they're just eating your energy and making you miserable and making you question yourself and just making things really hard, you know, that feeling when you got that gnawing in the pit of your stomach, you don't want to get out of bed, or you're like, oh, why do I have to do that with them today? Like that feeling of regret. They have to be people that in some way that you're energized by and nourish and fill your life in some way. They can be totally opposite from you. My wife is totally the opposite from me.
Yeah.
But that's the goal. And I don't necessarily think that's easy to find, because I think the big thing it takes is self-awareness of yourself. And that's a life's journey. Like, you know, if there's one thing great leaders are, or great people are, I think what they've developed is, number one, a self-awareness for themselves. Because when you know yourself, you know your weaknesses, you know your strengths, you know the type of people you need to be around, you know the type of people you need to get in to do certain tasks and jobs for you. Like, you just become more whole.
This is interesting too, because just last night I was having this almost meditative experience where I was trying to figure out what areas do I need to work on, what particular spot do I need to reflect on, because I haven't been reflecting as much lately as I used to. And I realized that not having that self-awareness is dangerous, because you might go down a path that could be either unproductive or even negative or something bad down the line. And so
have you done shadow work?
Shadow work? Like
shadow. Look it up from Carl Jung. I think.
Okay.
I never did it, but I wish I knew it at the time. And it's basically that we all have multiple personalities, but most people in some point in their life repress various bits. So one example is, people assume anger is a bad emotion. So they become like quite timid, and they go, well, of course anger's bad, because anger's bad for the world. And they've told themselves a story and why they should repress anger. But the truth is that anger's kind of good at times, because it can make you assertive, it can make you dominant in negotiations at certain times.
It's energy.
And it's to be able to draw on. And I think the point being is that, you know, all of us have good and evil and dark and bad within us. And I think the more that you can go and explore all of those things and explore the bits that you've repressed or pushed away or don't look at or ignore, instead of pushing and ignoring, if you come to accept they're in you, and know when you can use them and know how, it's just, and I've not done it. I think I have done it, but not like knowing that was the technique or whatever technique it is. But being comfortable with all bits of you is the only way I can describe it, is that you feel just a lot more aligned. You know, that battle that you sometimes have where you don't know who to be and what you are. Like, when you have really accepted all of you and been down to the belly and accepted everyone's got evil within them and been cool with that, and spent time going back through trauma and understanding more of what they want in the world, life just becomes more serene and less battle. And that will resonate with some people, and other people go, what the fuck he's talking about? And all I'll say is go and have a look. Go and look at shadow work and start playing with it.
Definitely. I'll link it down below too, because that's something I'm going to dig right into after this meeting. And what I'm sensing from you is a lot of Stoicism in a way, and even Friedrich Nietzsche as well. There's a lot of Uberman concepts there. And just
I haven't studied Nietzsche or even Stoicism. I think, like, I would hate to be one bit of anything. Like, one of the things that I hate is dogma and ideology, like being too fixed on something. If there's anything that I ascribe to, it's more of a Taoist view of the world where you're very flexible. You accept that all of world is change and you are ultimately flexible within it. You understand all the rules of the game and you can nudge and move there. That just fits with my personality. I think you're right. There's definitely bits of those things in it. I'm a bit torn with something like Stoicism. Stoicism is brilliant in so many ways, right? If the whole world was stoic, it'd be a better world. But, you know, there's a bit of me that goes, well, Stoicism's sort of great because you can choose how to react. You're much more in control of things. But I also love the fucking crazies. I love the crazy emotion and the artists and the people who can be all they can be by being irrational and crazy and amazing. And like, being a human's complicated. And so I don't have I like that you've noticed those, you know, if I might have just taken a bit of each of them, but a lot of these things are compelling and contradictory, just like we are as humans, right? We have these competing drives, these competing desires, these different circuits within us. And the way I look at the world is I've just come to accept all of them in all their beauty. And of course, nobody's ever perfect and everyone's always on a journey, but I've found a lot of peace with just accepting that you cannot control so much of the world and it's just fucking entropy all the time.
Yes, definitely. And entropy is a perfect word to go about it. And I really think that the polymath, or like the generalist, or whatever term you want to use, that interdisciplinary mindset, the Linky Brain mindset, I think is what's going in play here, where you're really seeing all those different pieces and putting them together in a unique personality for yourself. You are culminating whatever piece that interests you and put it into your life. And I really resonate with that as well.
Well, I think I just go, you know, where have we been? We've come from industrial age in last century, right? And where, you know, it was about specialization and specialists at certain things. But, you know, as we come into more of an age of robotics and AI and automation, like, there's going to be so many people in the world who are, frankly, unemployed. They won't have jobs to do because their tasks are repetitive and automatable. And so linky polymathic people fundamentally are creative people. The business of creativity is the business of making links. And I just think that, you know, the time has come. The people who are creative and interdisciplinary are by definition not replicable and hence not replaceable, or certainly the last to be replaced. And the ones where all the magic happens, because all innovation happens at the links between things. And I think certainly from my own experience, and having met a bunch of these through the fun that was Linky Brains, like, so many people with this skill set have felt alienated because of the school system, because of the industrial system, and it doesn't encourage or reward even jobs. It's like, well, what job do you do? I've had lots of jobs.
Yeah, me too.
Whether it be a VC, whether it be running an innovation company, whether it be brand and advertising. Now I'm chief of staff. I've been a coach. And why the fuck not?
Yeah.
Way more fun.
Well, these are all concepts that we've been talking about on the podcast with all the guests that I've had. And society was built on the specialists. Found in Henry Ford, when his Ford companies were wanting the people on the assembly line, and then school was formulated to conduce that kind of environment. Like, hey, these are specialist minds. So can you retain this information so you can repeat it over and over again?
Yeah. 1000%.
And so I kind of want to go back into some of the questions here, because one of the things you said before on the pre-show is that, and I've seen honestly in a lot of different places online about you, is that serendipity is a concept you've definitely employed as a principle, it seems like. What is it to you?
Well, let's talk about serendipity and synchronicity. So I kind of think of serendipity as probability, really, which is the more that you expose yourself to different things in life, the more chance you have of interesting things happening. And so I never knew this is what I was doing, but just very instinctively, I tried to live my life in flow as much as possible. And I tried not to fill up my diary. I just tried to do what I felt like doing most at the time. And sometimes they're fucking random things. It was like, you know, at various times where I was really trying to go through the battle in my mind was, you know, I met a magician from Australia. There was a dude that I just met in a cafe. He said he wanted to life coach me for 3 months. Like, if you ask anyone how something happened in their life, they always say it's through a chance encounter. So, you know, one of my encounters with serendipity got me to the guy who wrote the book on the serendipity mindset, a guy called Christian Belsch, I think. So yeah, I think what I try and do is I try and, like this, like I'd never met you before, right? I was just like, yeah, why not?
Exactly.
We didn't ask many questions. I said, yeah, sure, because you just don't know. So I do that, and then so that's interesting. So for me, it's probability and bumping into lots of things that kind of feel okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then and synchronicity is interesting to me as well, which is chance encounters that have meaning for you. And I think all are just underpinned by open-mindedness. It's just going into things with being open that you could have something that changes your life or has resonance and meaning that could influence you in some way. And so again, two of my things that I'm bad at dealing with are dogma and closed-mindedness, like, because there's not much I can work with. I'll do anything with someone who's open-minded, like play, have fun, explore, be curious. There's no end to what you can do.
Exactly. And you mentioned flow, which could be interpreted as the Taoist kind of flow, or going with the universe, so to speak, or going with Wu Wei. And then there's also the concept of flow for mental brain and having that optimal state of focus. And they honestly aren't mutually exclusive, but it is interesting that you mentioned that. We might have to go into that a little bit later too. But yeah, just like our meeting, for example. I came across you a while back, and I think I added you because of that. I don't remember exactly what caused me to come across you, because I remember mentioning that the initial message in our conversation. But then I found you again via your Polymath article, and that was something that resonated with me. The whole article was great, and your rest of the writings are awesome too. I've dug into those, and it's just interesting how that was just serendipity. I came across you just happenstance, and it's caused this conversation to happen.
And you don't know where you can go. Like, again, one of my life models is I just see people, right? I just see little stick drawings of people. And I see little circles, what are they called? Ever decreasing circles coming out. And my model of the world is, I call it ripples.
Ripples.
And yeah, so what I want to have ripples, and I want to move many minds in lots of big and small ways. And what I love about things like this, you don't know, like, I know, because I just get emails. There's so many people whose lives I've influenced, and it's everything from got the finance director of delivery to leave their job and go and do what she lived, to help someone raise funding, to recommend an introduction, which meant they got. And the thing that is endlessly fascinating to me, because I spent most of my 30s just linking things and people and ideas, is all the stuff I just have never seen. The person I introduced that did that, and all those, you know, if you start really learning network theory and complexity theory and just understand how networks work, like the invisible resonance and the invisible ripples are a thing that just endlessly fascinates me. I'd love to find a way to measure that without people having to actually record what they're doing. I don't think there's a way, but it'd be fucking great if there was.
Just super stalking them or something like that. No, but it reminds me of the concept of a superconnector. You seem to be that kind of person who, when there's someone comes to your town and they have a problem, they need to find somebody or need to solve this problem, more than likely they're going to come to you because they're like, hey, this guy can definitely help me solve this.
Well, here's the problem with superconnectors. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just a problem for me, because it was just always natural in what I did. I just assumed the world did it.
Yeah.
Now I know, now I actually do less of it. But now I see what I used to do, which would just be endlessly enthusiastic, energetic, and introduce everyone to 4 people. Like, I look back and go, that was sort of insanity. Do you know what I mean? It was like great for them.
Yeah.
It was great for me as well, because like it all comes back in ways like I often do a thought experiment which goes, if you're just 20, if you do nothing else, then just go out of your way to be super helpful to people. That's it. You have no expectation. You just see where that takes you. You'll be super fine in life. And yeah, I wish more people grew up with that mindset.
I think that I was lucky enough to find that kind of philosophy in life pretty early on, because when I started doing my own day jobs, teaching swim lessons and personal training, that's kind of the mindset I've always had. And because of that, people were happy to refer me to their friends and grow my client base, or tell people like, hey, this guy's really good at this job, that kind of thing. And I'm not trying to boast or something like that, but it is interesting how you're mentioning that. And I think that's what led me down this path. And I'm really interested to see too, because you seem to be ahead of, obviously you're older, you have more wisdom because of that, but you also seem to be ahead of me on that path. I wasn't saying anything about the hair. I was just saying about the wisdom, but yeah, exactly. And so kind of going back to that synchronicity and serendipity concept as well, is that Steve Jobs said that you cannot connect the dots looking forward, only by looking back. However, I have a theory, and I think you might agree too, that serendipity and synchronicity are 2 factors of us active people actually connecting the dots looking forward and just seeing how they might play out. What do you think about that?
So you mean that there's a thing that the Linky people see that is creating the future? They've almost imagined the future before it happens, and the start is that they make a link. Is that what you mean?
Essentially, of sorts, yeah. Almost kind of like manifesting in a way, but more in a scientific way, if you can say that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge, like, manifesting things, thought become things. Like, I think the world massively underestimates I think we have I think we generally have no conception of as a society, how incredible it is that everything around us is just something that's come out of someone's head. A chair was someone's imagination, and they put 4 sticks together and some string. Like, it never fails to fucking blow my mind. And even if you take someone like Donald Trump, where, you know, he just talks, build a wall, and just creates this news agenda, which creates this collective picture in the world's mind. Like, that is a Jedi superpower. It's an incredible thing. This is another thing I'm just endlessly fascinated by. The ability for us to conjure thoughts that become things and I especially get when we do it on a mass scale.
Yeah, coming together.
Yeah, and I just think we'll look back on a period like this, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but as just a period where we almost won't believe how little we were aware of how much we're just narrative storytelling sponges, and how we were so unbelievably influenced by words in ways that we just didn't conceive. I just think we're narrative making machines, and we're narrative taking machines.
Definitely. And I don't remember which platform this was, but I saw that you shared Derek Sivers' TED Talk or video about how to start how a movement starts, and how one person starts dancing in the middle of the field, and everyone's kind of like, oh, there's that kind of weird guy out there. But then one guy decides to follow him and join him. And because of that, a whole swarm of people joins in. So it's just interesting how that was a narrative, maybe not verbal, but a narrative, hey, let's go dance in this field. And then people started sensing that and going into it.
Everything, and that's why I love the crazies. Everything starts with someone they have to have the thing nobody else has said that then becomes the thing. Again, that's just another thing that that really fascinates me, and it saddens me that and especially today where you can't say anything, we are taking the edges of people in a huge fucking way, and it makes our society bland. And I think, you know, the linky creative people who should go beast mode and be encouraged, this is the Nietzschean in me, come out and be the all they can be, is huge. Like, when I was in my most flow, it's when I didn't care about what people thought about me. I said what I thought. I was prolific on social. I got loads of followers, and I loved it because I was creating. and it was sustaining me and nourishing me. But that only came from not caring. You know that thing where you write something, you just, you publish, go again, publish, go again, publish. Who cares? And I wish that was more of a message in our society, because it's gone way the other way.
Yeah.
And that's not good.
Much more conformist.
And groupthink. We're in, I don't know, sometimes I wonder if we're in Huxley world or Orwell world. I think we're probably more Huxley.
1984.
Yeah.
This comes down to another Steve Jobs quote, is that saying that people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are often the ones that do. And you mentioned crazy idea. What is your crazy idea that perhaps you might have not had a chance to speak about before?
Well, I don't know if it's a crazy idea, but what I want to do is, and a lot of your listeners probably won't understand how venture capital works. Like, a lot of the problem with so I start with this. Lots of people say that technology changes the world, right? Technology, software changes the world, that's how you change the world. I think the thing that really fascinates me is the gap between who you are and who you could be. That, to me, is infinite. Like, people are capable of way more than I think they are. And so if I have a thing that's just in me, it's, what does the world look like if you could help people be more of their true selves, be more in flow, and get rid of all the self-limiting beliefs, all the little soldiers that have grown up in our heads that, you know, have helped us survive, but have masked who we really are, and hence what we're really capable of. And in the coming years, I've built, but will manifest a model which is much less at the moment how people get funding to do early stage things, is very much around venture capital, which means there's a certain model where you have to just get loads of money, grow really fucking fast. It doesn't work for 99% of the people. My vision is to create psychology, media, money, resources behind people to help them find their true selves and put them on that journey. And I think it's as much for that thing about there's 7 billion people in the world, and there's that much talent, but not everyone has opportunity. I think what happens to the world where you can, and a lot of it's psychology, it's to give people the belief that they can do that thing that the school system, the conforming people around them have said they can't. And if I can help people make that step, that's what I want to do. And I want to build the models around the people, not starting with the economic return. So I want it not to be a conveyor belt. I want it to be an individual Nietzschean machine maker.
So I think I have something you might really like to just hear about as a concept, is that what I've been working on with PolyInnovator is self-education, or just education itself. And so this modular degree framework that I've cultivated is all about creating a pathway of education for not only people like us who are Linky Brains and Polymathic, but just people who want an alternative to college or people who want to pivot careers, a self-education framework that allows people to pursue what they want to learn. Not only does that help people get more engaged and even get into the state of flow, because they can choose what they're learning and be modular about what they're going to do next. And I'm trying to apply this gaming concept of skill trees that you would do in a game. It's like, you want to learn a skill, you go down a particular tree. I want to try to take that and put it into education, make it more gamified.
Right.
So that
I've got to say on that, like my son, so obviously in lockdown, my son's been at home. What I've worked out of a school, so he's 6, and basically he does his whole day schoolwork in about 40 minutes. And so, and as I understand it, lots of parents have had similar things. So it made me think, like, what's the purpose of school? So if he's doing a whole day's work in 40 minutes, I'm going, what's the point of school? And basically I think it's 3 things. It's daycare, it's learning, and it's social. And it just got me to wondering, going, is school like just a really actually bad environment? Like, if you could solve the daycare problem, which isn't easy at all, in fact it's the hardest one to solve in many ways, I think you could solve the mate thing by getting community around you and do enough fun things during the day. I've got them in front of things like Duolingo app, like proper gaming. And the learning loops, the thing that got me was the learning loops. You take it versus the exercise books. The gamified learning loops, I think so many things, everything's just becoming gamified, right? Because it's all games is they are experiences matched to the things that reward our brain pathways to do more of it, right?
More dopamine hits and whatnot.
Which in itself is a bit of a problem. But so it's just one of the things I started thinking about, which was, what is the purpose of school?
Well, And community aspect is something I've been having to learn more about when it comes to education, because when I started out with the modular degree framework, I didn't think too much about community. I thought about how someone would approach their own DIY degree kind of thing, but definitely having a community aspect, having mentors and peers helping you learn is definitely very important. So like you said, school is very important that way. Going off of Duolingo though, I've learned Spanish all throughout my life. My dad's Mexican, my stepdad's Mexican, and I've had that Spanish speaking all throughout my history. And so I've had immersion, but I also took 4 years of Spanish in high school. I also did Duolingo, and I also did some other self-development in Spanish learning. And Duolingo came very close second to immersion, maybe because of the loops, maybe because of the way it's formulated. But I wanted to shout that out because it was interesting how I even started learning Esperanto and Italian and French just a little bit, just kind of out of curiosity.
Same me. I'm sat there with my son. I'm going, this is all right. It's quite fun to learn. Yeah.
So going off another question here, and I think this is going to be kind of interesting too, considering your VC background too. I was reading a post by Tom Ferry about you, and he said point blank that you have an encyclopedic knowledge of the workings of startups, which is a very beautiful quote there. And what are your thoughts on that statement? Because it seems really interesting.
I mean, it's very kind of him. I think what he's probably referring to is, like, my knowledge probably isn't as encyclopedic as some. What I think I see is probably more truths than a lot of people. So getting to the heart of some of the things in venture capital that nobody talks about, to help be more of a Sherpa through maybe some of the unsaid past, unspoken past, darker past. I've written posts like 10 Truths about venture capital. I implore everybody to understand the rules of the game. So I've just written posts which are like, this is what a VC wants, therefore this is what's expected of you. So yeah, those are probably some of the things that he's been talking about. And so much just comes from sometimes people call me anti-VC. I'm just not. I'm just pro-education, because the narrative, we said we're narrative making machines. The startup says VC is the only way. VC is, you must do VC, otherwise you're a loser.
Right.
Like, no, you're not. Founders often end up with nothing when they take VC. They end up at the bottom of what's called pref stacks, where the investors get all the money before the founders, and the founders do all the work and end up with nothing. And it's nobody's fault. It's just the game and the system that people are in. And I'm just like, I just want people to understand the game, because there's so many second-time founders who wouldn't play that game again the second time, because there's better ways to make money in the world and potentially better ways to make impact in the world. It's just not a game for everyone, even though you would think that it is. And by the way, it's very much the right game for some. Just for education.
Yeah, definitely. And I see what you're saying as something positive, and I hope the listeners do as well, where you're just trying to make sure that people are making educated choices and and try to make sure that they make the right decision. If venture capital can put a big strain, we were talking about weight on our shoulders earlier, that can put a lot of big strain on people. Yeah,
and you need to be honest, that's table stakes. You have to go in taking if you're CEO, you just know you signed up for whatever 5 to 10 years, taking the weight. Like, you are getting the arrows slung at you minute by minute. I was an entrepreneur. I started a company with 2 other people, but it wasn't a VC backed company. I didn't have the same, I wasn't the warrior taking the hits of the arrows in front of me. And I have so much respect for those people. So much respect.
Well, and going back to that kind of encyclopedic knowledge, what do you think cultivated that deep level of knowledge? Pure experience? Because I saw on your LinkedIn, the experience history is just super long. I don't think I've seen a LinkedIn profile with an experience history that long. So was it something like that?
I guess it's curiosity, isn't it? It's curiosity. It's asking the dumb questions. With me, it's more of a, why does that work like that? So I always have to understand everything's a game, right? Whether we start by playing Monopoly, hopscotch in the street, everything has parameters and rules of a game. So whether it's understanding tax, whether it's understanding investment, you have to understand the rules and the incentives of all players. And then you can work out how to play within or break those rules. And venture capital is just one of the games. Advertising is a game. Like, all these things have games, they have rules, they have their own languages. So if you go into finance, you hear things like 25 bips. You need to know bips, a basis point. You need to understand, phrases like quantitative easing. Like, they've all got their own language. Nobody speaks normal, because when you come up with your own code language, it feels good that you can talk to other mates about code. You don't want just to go, it's just printing lots of money and inserting it at this point of the system, which inflates asset prices and erodes value. Do you know what I mean? You don't. People don't speak normal because they invent their rules and their language so that they can all keep the game somewhat discreet and increase their chance of winning that game.
This goes back to the kind of idea of building a tribe, though. If you're an assurance person, you're going to have a tribe around you of your same people. It's interesting that you say that, because we both have that curiosity. And just recently this year, I was in an accident. Someone hit me, hit my car, and it wasn't my fault. I had the right of way, but there was still kind of that weird situation, like whose fault is it? And the insurance had to figure that out. And so what I decided to do out of curiosity is like, hey, what kind of language does these insurance people use? And so the duty of care, how do you establish that? And that term, no one's going to know about that if you don't actually live in that world or have had a lot of experience like that, negative experience. And so I looked up the duty of care, and when they were recording me for my statement, I made sure I established my duty of care and pointed out that the other person was going during a red light and did not establish a duty of care. And I was able to win that case because of that.
Amazing. You just use the language where, and again, we're narrative taking machines, narrative making machines, right? You came up with the narrative that they understood and felt compelling to them because their sensory perceptors, it worked on them. Congratulations. And that's what life is. Life is just a series of games, and you've got to, the key is to play the game in a way that doesn't mean you get kicked out of them, right? It's like being the kid at the playground. You don't want to be the asshole and the moany one and the person that, you have to play enough so people want to keep playing with you. And this is where game theory comes in, but enough so that you keep winning. I
was just thinking about game theory.
Well, for me, Linky Brain was one of the moments that changed my life. It culminated, well, not culminated, but about 2 weeks into it, I wrote a blog post, which was like a coming out for me. And it ended up with me understanding that I had ADD, attention deficit disorder, at least to some degree, and literally gave me a level of self-awareness that transformed my life. But what was it? Linky Brains was me. I used to call creative people Linky Brains. And there was one day that I wrote a comment on a blog post about Linky Brains. And this guy called Chris Topman, who runs a very successful venture capital firm, phoned me up the next morning and said, when are we doing the Linky Brains conference? And then this other guy, Doug Scott, who now I work with and for, he started many, many multi-million pound businesses, including this one, Red Brain, joined in. And we started just hacking around the internet. So we changed our job title on LinkedIn to Head of Linky Brain Mafia. And we had no idea what it was. It was just us messing about. And then, but by the end of the week, there'd been 260 people who changed their LinkedIn profile to Linky Brain something, Linky Brain janitor, Linky Brain mafia boss, Linky Brain clean, whatever. And there was a thing where people started writing confessional blog posts around their Linky Brains. And so me, Doug, and Chris did the same thing. And for me, I just said, it was the first time it felt like a coming out moment for me, right? Because my thing was, I never learned properly. My brain is wired a bit different. I think everyone, I assume, thinks their brain's a bit different, but I never learned things in the normal way at school. I had to memorize things. I didn't understand things in a normal way. And so I was brilliant at fitting into what everyone else wanted, but I'd never, because I didn't have focus or attention, I never really worked out what I wanted. All these things were insights for me. And like, it feels such a weird thing. So you read the blog post, it's called something like My Linky Brain, Why the Fuck Didn't you Tell Me?
Yeah.
And nobody, and it went kind of viral, and it probably wouldn't mean a lot to loads of people, but for me, it was like, just wait. Yeah. And it's the first time I could be who I was. And so we're messing about and we're doing this community, and it's just this community of polymathic, Linky Brains, interesting, creative people. Some of them were fucking odd and could barely speak. Some of them, like, there was one who was like super dyslexic, but she'd written this like double first class paper on the history of everything in Cambridge. And we just had dinners, and there were coffee clubs, coffee meetings happening in Beijing and France and Paris. Like, it was just this groundswell of community that someone like maybe an Eric Weinstein now with the portal does properly. Yeah. We were just messing about on the internet going, what's happening here? There's all these people doing these things and we have no control over it. And so that was it really. It was almost like, I'd say almost one of the first upswells of linky, interesting, creative people going, thank God there's people like me in the world.
Well, did you have like a list of people? Because I would want to connect with pretty much almost all those people, I feel like.
You probably do. There's all sorts of little groups. So you'll see little groups. I don't know if we've got an email database anywhere. If you go onto the groups, you'll just find a bunch of them. Like we played with, do we create a decentralized movement or do we centralize it, and how, and you do all that. But the reality was, I was a venture capitalist, Doug was running the companies, Chris was running his own VC fund. So we think of that little moment in time, this like 6-month period, is just like this coming together. It's almost like, is it almost like
serendipitous?
It's like coming in and going apart, coming in and going. But lots of people's lives were very changed by that, and the links and things, that people they met.
So you were talking.
It still goes today. There's still people who go, my God, this is amazing, or I met that because of that. It's like, it still rumbles.
Yeah, definitely. And back to the whole entropy thing that we mentioned earlier, how the universe is going towards a more chaotic thing, but we also have, as humans, the ability to bring order together. And there's a whole flow aspect about how certain things are just bound to repeat themselves. And these polymathic Linkybrain people are not anything new. We've had it all throughout human history. I just think for the past 150 years or so, we've just been kind of suppressed in a way. And we finally are able to connect with people like ourselves through this internet channel. You know what I mean?
Well, this girl I spoke of, she called Helen, and she's a genius, but she can barely speak. And so she's like highly dyslexic. But her theory, she went back and obsessed about the theory of the world. And basically, I will probably do her theory no service here, but you know, a headline from it is that, you know, we all grew as monkeys. We were all, you know, and all the monkeys were pulling the bananas. They're like, I think of them like mechanistic production monkeys. Get the bananas, cut the bananas, move the bananas there, go to next banana, blah, blah, blah. But there's about 30% of the monkeys that were like, fuck this, what happens when the food runs out? And so they went running over rivers and crocodiles and deserts. Loads of them died, but they're the explorer ones.
Yeah.
And the ones who evolved from that were the ones who were the curious explorer linky ones, because they just were. That's how they evolved. And, you know, you can see it anywhere in society, whether it's the entrepreneurs and the management consultants. The consultants are the mechanistic cut, and the entrepreneurs are fucking, well, what's next when you've done all the cutting and you got to do new forms of value?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a guest on the show, Sean Shepard, and he had a quote where entrepreneurs are the crazy ones, because you have to be because as an entrepreneur, you're going up and down. You have to go along with the ride, so to speak. And if you're not crazy enough to do it, you're just going to get burned out really quick. And it's definitely
it's a disease, like in a good and bad way. Like it's a disease. Like you can't not, when you're a creator, you've got to create.
Yeah.
And I've got the creative thing. Like I guess I'm an entrepreneur. I've started a fund and I've started a company. I don't feel like true entrepreneur. Like my attitude to risk, I think I've got quite a healthy attitude to risk, or at least, you know, more balanced. So I don't put myself in uber entrepreneur category. I'm more entrepreneurial, who's taken like some risks, but always fairly insulated risks. You know, I've never put my house on the line. So anyway, that's me.
Yeah. Well, you've mentioned that Linky Brains are more of a creative people, but to me, it also seems just like a systematic thinker, being able to make those connections in a unique way. And obviously someone who's entrepreneurial as well. I even answered a question I think you had on there on Quora, where it's like, what is a Linky Brain to you, or something like that. And I went on there and answered that too, because I think it's someone who's polymathic, which we've alluded to before. What do you think is the strongest characteristic then of a Linky Brain person?
Somebody makes links. Like the whole of humanity has progressed by making the synaptic leaps by a scientist and a gardener getting together, or a philosopher and a builder getting together. Like the humanity has always been built on those disconnected dots. And so it's anybody who it's almost anyone who has an appreciation for that. And who contributes to that process. And society needs loads more of it, because we're kind of sleepwalking off a cliff in many ways. And a lot of us are stuck in these mental prisons that I talked about earlier. And I'm with you that I think we're made to be freer and to create and to play and there's nothing more exciting when you've been in that thing, when you're in flow, when you're in rooms where 1 and 1 equals 3, and you're just doing something together. Like everyone I've spoken to, when they talk about the best moments in their careers, they're with those small teams when they're building 1 + 1 = 3, and it just feels unstoppable.
literally someone on the podcast just recently was saying the people like us who can make 2 + 2 = 5, just like you just said there. So
there you go.
That's fantastic. Something you say on the Linky Brain website too is the fact that the more of these polymathic and Linky Brain people are connected, the stronger society will be. And you just said that again moments ago, and I agree 100%. We need more people like that coming together to change the ways for the better. I actually created a project called United Living Construct, which was meant to be like a hub of innovation for the same kind of ideal. And so geared more towards these polymathic innovators. And what do you see a community like that forming in the next coming decades?
I don't know. Well, one of the big things that I'd love them to feel safer, right? So,
Yeah.
so me personally, I really have benefited and sought people who give me the freedom to play. It's like being a yearling. There's a brilliant quote in Mind Hunters where they talk about there's certain people who are just like yearlings who need the blindest, and you can't control them, and they're just like running. They seem to be running all over the place, but they've got this inner thing where they know that they're going somewhere. But if you ask them to plan it, the journey becomes less interesting. And what I'd love, if I had one wish, is that you can empower these people the freedom to explore and play and have that sense of safety. Because I think that for a lot of these people, whether they're generalists, creatives, polymaths, like, the world distrusts them because they don't understand them, because their brains are wired different. And that's good, because you need differently wired brains. But I think that it can feel very alienating. I think one of the things we put on the site was you can feel very alienated and disconnected because the world doesn't understand you. And the great thing about social, and the great things about things like your podcast is there's now tribes. There's people who are like me, and you go, oh, thank fuck.
Yeah. Well, and I definitely resonate.
But equally, sorry, it's equally important. You don't go, hey, I'm special. We had certain Linky Brains people that go, yay, we're Linky, let's go Linky. It's like, nah, that's kind of not what it's about.
Yeah. It's more of just being able to express yourself more naturally, because yeah. And I resonate with that. I've definitely felt alienated. And one thing I've always been against is college for the most part. I didn't want to go to it. I hated school. I wasn't never much of a academic. I was a scholar. I loved to learn. One of my best learning experiences in high school, I've said thousands of times, was when I went to the philosophy section of my school library and just burned through that section in a matter of months. Just went all the way through it, voraciously reading it. And after high school, I decided to spend my time self-development for 6 or 7 years.
Now, would you say that you are turned on by concepts and ideas and the links between ideas? Because I've noticed that people, like, I've noticed that's my thing. Like, there's some people who are really like mechanistic. They love optimizing things and interludes that I can't really care about. But when I'm in the world of connecting, linking ideas and concepts, that's the thing that I love. And I always try and work out people's brains. How would you describe how your brain works?
Definitely more like yours in the more macro view, the big picture, the cloud, heads in the clouds. And I think that for people like us, the Linky Brain, Polymathic, I think that is something that is more common for people to be more head in the clouds and big picture kind of thing. But I do think that people who are polymathic can be detail oriented too, not only through practice, but also naturally. I think there is people who are maybe not as common, but like polymathic, detail, optimization oriented people. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, and I think that's the point. Like, we never define the Linky Brain thing that much because there's just a spectrum of, the brain's wired in weird ways. Some people see numbers, and some people see patterns in things and sensory. Some people taste things as well. Fucking mad. Yeah. So I'm careful never. We were careful never to over define it.
Yeah, I do have a definition of a polymathic spectrum that I wanted to kind of talk to you about, because you've even alluded to yourself saying maybe I should call myself a rubbish polymath or a multi-potentialite or a good old generalist is something that I quoted the because I love that. And there's kind of this lack of definition that I do think that we do need to kind of define a little bit, where there's a spectrum of it. A multi-potentialite, someone who has the potential to do many things and has that insatiable curiosity. And I think that's kind of the start of a Linky Brain. And then after that, you have more of a jack of all trades, someone who's not is a master of none, but also could be a master of one, is the full saying. And so that'll be the next step up. That's someone who's just delving into those ideas a little bit, but not necessarily just one or two, many of them. Then you have a generalist, who's someone's more adept or novice at a good level, but not necessarily obviously a master or highly skilled. Then you have the universalist, someone who is many skilled in many different areas, but definitely not a master or a polymath just yet. And someone who's definitely deeply knowledged, someone who is a wealth of knowledge in many different areas, even a master level of sorts, is a polymath. So I wouldn't even consider myself a polymath just yet.
Wow. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, it'd be great. I don't know if you've written anything down on that. It'd be great to read. I mean, I have funny relationships with labels and concepts. Like, part of me goes like, we're abstract making machines, right? We make sense of the world by creating labels and constructs and things to make things easily understandable for other people, but they're all illusions, right? They're all just like, they're words and language constructs. Having said that, they're really fucking helpful.
Yes.
Like, you know, if you think about something like the intellectual dark web, that was just basically some people who had interesting views on the world, but calling them that made it more of a thing. So I think of these, so if those things are helpful as labels for people who can relate to them and make them feel like they've got a tribe to understand them, great. If it's a marketing term to make them more appealing to the world, great. Do you know what I mean? All these things have things, but like I said to you earlier, I try not to get, like, the world is just a bunch of fucking waves and that. I'm just like,
vibrations.
Right? So if you really want to go to quantum, you just go, well, do you know what I mean?
We can go real metaphysical if we
you can go really into what is reality. But I'd love to read that, because they have, as we knew with Linky Brains, like, what do we do with Linky Brains? We gave a word for the legitimize something for people and made them feel like they had a tribe. So I think those things have a value in the same way that Linky Brains gave some kind of legitimacy to me and others and how they thought.
Definitely. And so one thing that I've been trying to do with each of my guests is have people define the word polymath to them. So what I ask is, what is a polymath to you? And I'll ask someone who makes links. You want to care to expand on that a bit?
A curious person who makes links. Like, the truth is, I don't know what a polymath is, but I know that it's someone who is somewhat proficient in a bunch of different and intersecting fields, but the value they provide to the world is making links. I'm interested in that bit of them. Like, I'm less interested in, is a polymath a genius or not a genius? Is it like, that's a problem. The reason I read that article was like, I'm not fucking polymath. Polymath's like Leonardo da Vinci, but I'm like, am I? Like, I was just playing. So that's it. Making links. Someone who makes links.
Yeah, I think that's a very good answer for that, because every time I ask that question, someone who I'm talking to could either have always known what a polymath is and always kind of liked it, or has literally learned it the day of or day before. I've had both ends of the spectrum, and each time,
yeah, go on.
I was going to say, each time I've gotten a really great answer. So I think it's a worthwhile question, nonetheless. And I think that your answer was very awesome as well.
Thank you, man.
Oh, man, I love this conversation so far. So quick fire questions here to get started then. It's going to be kind of hard to answer these, but what is your Ikigai?
My what? Oh God. Remind me, that is what you love. Remind me what the things are.
So it's what you love, what you're really good at, what you can provide to the world, and what you can make money off of.
Helping people realize their potential.
How can you make money off of that?
In raw disguise. So I've done it throughout my life. So I've been a coach, I've been a VC helping startups. Like, my whole thing is lifting people up. I've drawn my picture. If I build everyone up, I get to love, security, and happiness, whether that's my kids, whether that's my wife, whether it's my co-workers. If I make everyone better, in all the ways.
You just had
go on.
Sorry, I just said you just had a visual of like Atlas holding up the world. Just naturally there, you had it there. I thought that was a good an anecdote.
It's actually, the picture is actually me. Is me. It's an escalator, and so people going up the escalator. You know, another way that when I was playing with logos for the thing I'll do next, it's just lifting up ladders. I mean, it's kind of that. It's, can you lift the people up the ladder?
It kind of reminds me of Gary Vee's concept of building the biggest building, not by tearing no one else's down, but by just literally building the biggest building and building people up along the way. And then the next question is, why do only 1% of companies actually need venture capital versus the 99%?
Because only the model doesn't work for most companies and most people. The reason is actually most people haven't questioned whether they want it or not. And whether they want to build that kind of company where they lose the control and they have to grow it, they have to grow it in a way where the answer is always growth. What do we do tomorrow? Buy more Facebook ads. What do we do tomorrow? Hire 6 people. And you often build companies which just grow too fat, too fast. And my point is simply matching the model to the temperament and working out what somebody wants. Okay. That's what.
One last question before we start wrapping up is, what is potential.co and what do you see as purpose?
So this is the thing I alluded to a little bit earlier, which is just, in fact, let me do a little thing. I'm going to read you a little mission statement. Perfect. Because I just wrote it, and so we can beta test this to the world. So potential is myself and this guy called Doug Scott. Here's the mission of potential.co. Many feel like they somehow don't fit, that the system hasn't worked for them and instead dulled their talent. Our mission is to unleash their explosive potential on humanity by accepting who they really are and giving them the safety and belief to follow their true path. We are not a VC, incubator, or accelerator. Playing the same game gets the same results, and that would be boring. We have a unique model, but you'll only get to know when we know each other well. What will the world be when we're done? More time freedom, more happy faces, more meaningful work with people you love, more leaps for humanity. There are 7 billion people in the world. Talent is everywhere. Opportunity isn't. Come play. On that will happen now. It's going to take a bit of time because we need a bit of money, and we're playing at the moment. So you won't see a lot in the next 18 months, but hopefully then you'll start seeing some things.
How can someone achieve their potential then?
First, I think the key is understanding your true self. So the quicker you can get people to know who they really are under the persona, because that is where life force energy exists. That's where you find the thing that you are truly meant to do. Like, that thing is not a cliche. There's just an energy when you're doing the thing you're meant to do that is just natural. And I'm like, so many people just don't find that.
Yeah, finding their Ikigai, if you will, too. Yeah. So what is the call to action for the audience today to take what we've talked about and apply it in some way?
Shadow work. Get to know, go to the deepest traumas within yourself. Know you've got evil inside you. Find out, look at Gabor Mate, find out what trauma you've got, what you're addicted to. Like, even if you think I'm cool, Jack, what you've probably done is you've probably got your cognitive mind going, yeah, I fucking worked this stuff out, and yeah, it's cool. And your mind, and it's probably your ego, like, telling you you're fucking cool because your ego doesn't want to delve into your soul. Yeah. I'd go into depth and I'd sit down with yourself and I'd stop and I'd reflect and I'd look up Carl Jung in the shadow and I'd do deep work on yourself, because self-awareness is where great leaders lie. It's where Ikigai lies, and it's where potential lies.
Oh man, powerful.
Good,
yeah, that was just like, I want to ask the next thing, but I'm sitting here just trying to absorb what you just said. So when I rewatch this when I'm editing, I'm going to have my mind blown once again. And so I'll have links down in the description, but where can people find you online?
Well, if I'm still on Twitter and I haven't been like just disgusted by the bile on it and the ridiculousness of it, I'm on Twitter at Alex Dunsdon. I'm also Alex Dunsdon on LinkedIn. Those are the 2 places you can get me.
Perfect. And thank you for coming on.
No problem. Great to be on. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh man, it's been fantastic.